Morning everybody, Simon Dixon here, and it's a really exciting day. I've just got up ultra early in order to catch up on everything to do with the Facebook hearing. So there was a Senate hearing yesterday, and today there's another House hearing. And my first observation is that this really is an important moment for the future of finance and the history of cryptocurrency. Facebook has done what I said it would do in one of my very early streams. I think my first Twitter stream. So I talked about how 7 years ago I was talking about my talk on the future of finance and how a company like Facebook would be getting into financial services and take on the banking system. And in the first stream on Twitter, if you go back, the video on YouTube was 7 years ago. But the stream was somewhere further down the line on my Twitter feed, where I talked about how Facebook's going to shake up the world with this one. It's really bullish for Bitcoin. But now we have a lobbyist that has all the money needed in order to take on the cryptocurrency argument. Don't get me wrong, return to that video. I'm not going to go into this today. But the fact of the matter is we've got a spokesperson for cryptocurrency that is operating within the hybrid model of being a company and doing all the things that a company needs to do in order to comply and regulate, at the same time as gradually iterating out to the decentralized version of cryptocurrency. And therefore, I think this is going to do so much for the cryptocurrency industry. The conversations that we've wanted to have for so long are now at the front of every politician's globally mind. Everyone that's important in the future of making decisions in the financial system is now discussing this topic. So this is a really net positive. And what I want to do in this video is go through 10 important takeaways for those of you that didn't have the opportunity to watch it, and just discuss some of the nonsensical things that were being discussed in that. And apparently we're in for another circus show today, so look forward to delivering another video on what happened today in the House hearing. So let's reel off the 10 points. So I wrote down some notes. I'm just going to go through them. The first thing is Facebook have agreed or confirmed that they will report directly to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. So the interesting thing here is that it was set up as a Swiss entity, the Libra project. And it's going to have a wallet developed by the Calibra, they're calling it. And Facebook is the entity that's going to deploy the technology through WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger, and probably everything else that they gain control of next. But they have confirmed that they will report directly to the IRS. I think it's a wise move to confirm that, because at the end of the day, although the whole talk was about anti-money laundering, this is all about tax collection and control. Let's be serious. So the fact that they've said that they're going to report directly to the IRS shows the difference between those that want to use Facebook's cryptocurrency, or Libra, whatever we want to call it, versus Bitcoin, because Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO. It can't report directly to the IRS. It can't be called in for a hearing. It doesn't have anyone that can do that. It's just an open source, decentralized project that is the largest supercomputer in the world, that is bringing the ability to own your own money, spend your own money, and financial sovereignty to everybody in the world, and creating a force that rewards the saver because of his fixed money supply and regulates the regulator to not get out of control with its policies. So anyway, diversion. So Facebook have agreed that they will report directly to the IRS. So Facebook is what we thought it would be. It's a tax collection machine for the US, and it's a KYC machine for the US, where the government will have backdoors as a result of that. I'm just going to go to the second point. The second point is that they talked about the US wallet. Now, this is really interesting. In yesterday's live stream, I talked about how if the US get out of control with this, remember, it is being created out of a Swiss institution. And if that Swiss institution, the US, that they might end up restricting the US if the US gets out of control on its policies. So what we had is confirmation that the US wallet, so Calibra is the organization or the name for the wallet that they'll be developing to use the cryptocurrency Libra. And the US wallet is going to be separate to the non-US wallet. So here's exactly what I said. The wallet is going to be the controlling the onboarding and offboarding and on ramps, kind of like the bank. But the cryptocurrency is designed to be open source, and their version of decentralized, with node operators being companies like Spotify, Visa, MasterCard, Uber, Coinbase, and anyone else that becomes a node operator and spends 10 million and gets into their walled garden of being a node operator. But they're going to separate the US wallet from the non-US wallet, which means that by nature, there's going to be lots and lots of processes on the wallet to make sure that they know whether you're from the US or not. And they could probably do that better than anybody else because of the large amount of data that they hold on US citizens and other people that are using Facebook. So that's an important point. And they also said that the US wallet will be backed by the US dollar. So essentially, this is looking to compete with a US-friendly IRS reporting version of Tether, whereas most people in the cryptocurrency industry use Tether at the moment as the US dollar backed. And they were Tether, the company Finfinix invented Tether, which was the USD backed cryptocurrency that exists on top of the Bitcoin protocol. And it was really acted as the bank for all of the crypto to crypto exchanges. So companies like Binance became huge because they were using Bitfinex in order to essentially be their bank through Tether. And this allowed the growth of the cryptocurrency industry because it didn't need to get banking, and instead it used Tether as a USD-backed cryptocurrency to have trading pairs against all the different cryptocurrencies and altcoins and tokens and everything. So really the US wallet is going to be backed by the US dollar, and it's going to be treated differently for non-US, which will probably be a basket of different. So maybe it's going to be European custom wallets will be backed by Euro. The Swiss wallet will be backed by the Swiss franc or whatever it may be. So that was an interesting distinction. I think that at the end is going to be that it's not quite a basket of cryptocurrencies which will have its own value. I think they're creating stable coins in different wallets for each jurisdiction, which means that it will peg its value to those different things. So that will be interesting development to watch what happens next. Third point, they were asking lots of questions on why Switzerland. Now, obviously, Facebook, as somebody that has a lot of money, a lot of lawyers, and really is the company that's equipped to take on this kind of questioning and hearing. I'd much rather it be, Facebook up there than some of the CEOs of some of the crypto companies that we're invested in, because I think that Facebook is equipped to take on such a challenge. But obviously they gave the political answer in answering why Switzerland. They said that other organizations are in Switzerland, like the World Trade Organization or the Bank of International Settlements, and it's a politically neutral place in order to do this. But what they really wanted to say is, well, because US regulations suck, you're creating a non-competitive environment which is driving all the innovation overseas. Why do you think companies like Google and all of those are re-domiciling to Ireland? Because you're making it impossible. You want the US dollar to be the world reserve currency forever, but at the same time, in order to relinquish control of the US dollar, you're making anti-competitive policies that are driving people to want to go into countries that consider things like privacy more importantly, or have got the balance right between things like GDPR, which is protecting privacy, versus anti-money laundering policies, which are doing the opposite of protecting privacy in order to prevent money laundering. And so the US is driving people to want to do their innovation out of Switzerland. And remember, while the US might think that they have a lot of control, there is nothing stopping Facebook wanting to re-domicile, just like companies like Google and others have done. And that's, really the beauty of competing countries, and the ability to re-domicile and keeping other countries honest. And at the end of the day, the US does need to realize that at some point, it was threatening. I think at some point, I remember one politician, I think I heard this from Caitlin Long, that there was a hearing, and the US, which is SWIFT, is the company that controls all the international ramps for international payments across the banking system, which is predominantly dominated by the US and controlled by the US. And when Europe said that they wanted to create a European version of SWIFT, they actually threatened that they would sanction Europe. So if the US sanction Europe and make it impossible for Europe to gain access to the US banking system, then that would be the end of the US dollar as a dominating currency. And these policies of controls are digging their own grave as we reach the end of their 50-year cycle, over 50-year cycle of being the world reserve currency ever since Bretton Woods too. But anyway, that's, the question, why Switzerland? I think that's the answer that they should have or wanted to give, but they couldn't, because they're being smart, and they know how to do lobbying, and they know how to make this project happen. And they know that if they say they'll give all the data to the IRS, they will report directly to the IRS. At the same time, they are looking to apply to make it exempt and treat it as a currency, rather than treat it as a property. So this is where Facebook gets so interesting. There is a power play in the US where the US wants cryptocurrency to be a security, the SEC. The CFTC want cryptocurrency to be a commodity. The IRS want cryptocurrency to be money, or they want to treat it as property, and all these different three-letter acronym organizations that all want everybody's money and control, are all fighting over each other. Who's going to collect the money? Who's going to get the fines? The SEC wants to fine the companies so that they can fund and grow their organization. The CFTC want to take the fines so that they can fund everybody, their organization. And the IRS wants to put together the optimized structure in order to collect as much tax. Because remember, yesterday's video, the bit that's not getting as much attention as it should is the US have said, the Treasury, the Finance Treasury Minister, whatever the hell you call these, I'm not a fay with all these different people in US politics, but they were saying that the US is going to run out of money by September if we do not increase the debt ceiling. Now, here's the important part, and I've got ahead of myself. I'm only on the third point, but let's step into common sense corner right now. This whole thing was really focused on anti-money laundering. Anti-money laundering is not the major issue that the US needs to think about in terms of its financial system. It needs to think about the whole system imploding as a result of their crazy debt cycle Ponzi scheme in fiat currency that feels like it's about to implode at some stage because they're running out of money in order to continue and perpetuate the debt cycle. The debt crisis is what they need to focus on. The debt crisis is what can lead to every single consumer losing all of their bank deposits, and the insolvent system that says that it can back up and guarantee the financial system not having enough money. The debt crisis that's meant that their pension system has turned into a Ponzi scheme. These are the big issues. And they gave some really interesting statistics, which I'll cover in other points. I've got ahead of myself, but we'll return to this point slightly. But why Switzerland? Because your regulations suck. You're not following competition. You're not supporting the industry. You're not acting smart because you want the US dollar to remain the predominant cryptocurrency. And Donald Trump said it all. The US dollar, it will always were his words, be the most important world reserve it probably will be a cryptocurrency soon once FedCoin is launched, but it will always be the world reserve currency. History has said that Donald Trump will 100% be wrong, and I still believe that Donald Trump became president in order to be the front guy to blame the fall of the US empire and the US dollar on, and I think that that's what might be coming next. So point 4 was huge focus on anti-money laundering. Now, this is a really interesting statistic. They gave some really interesting stats on the importance of anti-money laundering and the progress that they've been made since the Bank Secrecy Act, where essentially, a combination of the Patriot Act and the Bank Secrecy Act removed all privacy rights and freedom of speech rights from the United States, when essentially after 9/11, all sorts of policies reversed all of these privacy and human rights in order to tackle the terrorism issue. I'm not saying that anti-money laundering is not an issue, but we all know that it happens in cooperation with the banks at the central bank large-scale level, and in the cash economy at the smaller level. But here was an interesting statistic. FinCEN, which is the institution that enforces many of the rules in terms of money operators and anti-money laundering, they collected more than 20 million suspicious activity reports, known as SARs. So we operate banktothefuture.com as part of our anti-money laundering requirements and rules and regulations. Every time there is something known as a suspicious activity, we have to send to our regulator what's known as a suspicious activity report. FinCEN has received 20 million suspicious activity reports, creating an interesting, scenario of how they actually handle those 20 million, and probably one of the reasons that the US is in such debt. But anyway, but of those, there was 296 anti-money laundering convictions. 20 million suspicious activity reports, 296 real anti-money laundering convictions. If anybody does any kind of cost-benefit analysis on the fact that 296 convictions resulted as a result of collecting everybody's data, requiring everybody to put all of their data at risk, at the mercy of hackers, to the point where I know right now, if I wanted, I could probably figure out a way of going on the dark market and buying my own passport from a criminal that has hacked it as a result of these anti-money laundering policies. And I know that I have lost all privacy. I know that my data is absolutely there for anyone that wants to take it. That's the cost to society of those 20 million reports that have led to 296 convictions. And at the same time, the US government is running out of money in September because of the debt Ponzi scheme that is backing the US dollar at the moment. I really think that someone needs to figure out, and Facebook is really bringing these conversations to the front so that people can actually step into common sense corner and really reevaluate. Is anti-money laundering the major focus, or is it the collapse of the entire financial system? And no one's focusing on the collapse of the entire financial system. They all just believe we can perpetuate this cycle again and again and again and again. Well, we're reaching the end of that 50-year cycle, as we said. So at some point, something's got to give. Someone's going to focus on this. Points 5. Many people were talking, this was hilarious. So many of the politicians were talking about the concept of how Facebook could lead to bank runs. So, if Facebook was treated at a bank, then, oh God. This really brings to the conversation I've tried to have with the conversation I've tried to have with politicians since I left investment banking in 2006 and spent my time giving talks on how banks create money and how that leads to systemic risk in the financial system. But now that conversation is coming to the front. And you know what's hilarious? Essentially, Facebook, if it was backing all of its assets by the dollar, is a movement towards non-fractional reserve banking. Full reserve banking, the thing that I was endorsing way back in 2006, before the financial crisis. But now this is a movement. Stablecoins have created a movement to non-fractional reserve banking. Now, granted, the dollar is backed by fractional reserves, so it's backed by banks that are fractionally reserving. But those dollars, this is a movement. The peer-to-peer lending movement is a movement towards lending reserves. Deposits have to exist before loans can be made. And the fact that we now have a model here of non-fractional reserve banking as a result of what Facebook's looking to copy from Tether, This is the conversations are moving forward. Now, they talked about the concept of how will you protect Facebook from, creating a bank run. Well, they're saying that they're going to back it 1-to-1. They're making a commitment in front of the hearing to say that they're going to back it 1-to-1. That means that you can't have a bank run unless those funds got stolen or seized, much like what happened with Tether in when crypto capital had those funds seized by government institutions, which removed the backing. The fact of the matter is here that this is a non-fractional reserve system. The bank runs only occur when you're actually creating more deposits than actually exist, and therefore you don't have enough deposits to meet those liabilities. And when people have a fear that you don't have enough deposits to meet those liabilities and they question the solvency of the institution, then they all queue up to try and get their deposit back in a hot potato, and those that are in the end is what's known as a bank run and insolvency. That is a fractional reserve banking problem, not a fully backed full reserve problem. So if you really are concerned about the bank run, then you should be encouraging full reserve banking rather than saying let's protect the status quo fractional reserve system and let's question bank runs. So if you really care about bank runs, then the time to care about that is when you're discussing the banking system, not the other one, the full reserve system. Interestingly, the battery on my device that was storing the notes has actually run out now, and I haven't got my other points. But I think I've covered pretty much most of the topics that I did want to cover. What else was interesting, if I can remember? I think the main point, the main takeaway is that this conversation is really it's bringing to the front of the politicians and everybody, the conversations that we have need to have for decades and decades and decades. The fact that Facebook have done this now is they know that the end result, well, maybe they don't know, but the end result of this is that this is going to create hyper adoption of Bitcoin as people start to understand that regulations are causing companies like Facebook to create innovation but decrease the user experience of everyday people using money. And that's the fact that this is going to be open. Oh, there was another point as well that they confirmed, and that is they were trying to get people to understand the concept of decentralization, the politicians to understand, and clearly they couldn't grasp it. There were some that grasped it, but they were trying to explain the difference between the wallet versus the actual cryptocurrency. So Libra, they confirmed, is going to be fully open source. So there will be, the people will be able to freely transact just like they do with Tether at the moment. But the wallet, Calibra, will control the off-ramp and the on-ramp, where you have to do all the KYC, and there will be different wallets for the US, different wallets for EU, and compliance with international money laundering and all sorts of regulations at those levels. And so really this is going to cement the model that as long as you have regulations on the on-ramp and off-ramps, then you might be able to have the free flow of money through the open source cryptocurrency that will be denominated and operated out of Switzerland. So that's an interesting development, which is exactly how Tether works at the moment. People can freely transfer tethers between each other, but the on-ramps and off-ramps are subject to money laundering regulations and KYC and all that type of stuff. So this is, and essentially that's how the banking system works as well. You control the money laundering requirements at the on-ramps and off-ramps in converting currencies and going into the banking system. I think I've covered the 10 points. Unfortunately, it wasn't as structured as I wanted because my battery ran out. But I think we got everything, the takeaways. And what I'll do is I'll make sure we review the hearing today, which is set to be, I think, as interesting, but maybe even dumber from what I hear, because this is where there's a lot more politicians that may not have as are not as clear about the banking system as the ones that were yesterday, who were really not clear about how the banking system works. So let's see what comes with that. My takeaway, Facebook's, this is groundbreaking, this is changing the world. It's going to lead to mass Bitcoin adoption as people get to see the comparison between Facebook's cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. It also means that we have vast money and vast lobbying efforts in order to push through policies. So there's going to be this love-hate relationship that everybody's going to have with Facebook cryptocurrency from the Bitcoin community, as it does a service, and at the same time, Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin doesn't really care, doesn't have the lobbying effort. But it's great to see. They claim that this is all about anti-money laundering. It's not about anti-money laundering. It's about tax collection, power control, making sure the US is the dominant economy for the future, which is their job as politicians, to protect and enforce the US, or whatever it is, whatever their manifesto is. That's what it's all about. It's a really fascinating time. I'm really glad that this is actually happening, and I will bring out more commentary as this unfolds. Over and out. Thanks for your time. I'm going to get back to work as usual.